So is this just starting or did the last? Oh my gosh, I don't know if I need to repeat everything. You guys, how many days that I still can't quite get the hang of it. Okay, let's just pretend like it's starting from zero. So if I'm just then forgive me. Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. Okay. Um, hi. I have been talking for about 5 minutes thinking I was live, and I don't think I was. So I'm going to repeat everything that I said. Um, so today I'm going to focus on idioms for my study practice, and I did some idiom practice earlier in the week with French. And as you may know, I like to separate my practice. So to do French either on a different day or at a different time, so that it just kind of helps me to not get confused by the languages. But because I already did my French practice with idioms, I kind of have a plan all set for what I want to do with Spanish. So today I'm focusing on Spanish. And um, basically, what I did with French was I used a search engine and I looked up something like common French idioms. And then I looked at some of the stuff that came up. And then once I found an article that I liked or a blog post that I liked, I went to that one and I used that to do the rest of um, my study session. And so the reason that I put common is because I want them to be idioms that people actually use. I don't want them to be like from the, 1800s or something that are not being used by anybody and that I'd sound really silly if I use them. I want them to be things that people actually say. So hopefully they were all for French, they were all food related idioms, which I found interesting. I love food, so I quite enjoyed those. They were funny. And um, there was only one that I crossed off my list because I was like, I don't see any situation where I would use this. This doesn't make sense to me. But the rest of them seemed like I could figure out situations where they would be common and I would use them. And what is different between Spanish and French is that because I have much more experience with Spanish, I actually know a lot of idioms. So the issue that I have is that I don't use them. I know them, but I don't use them. So that's why today is more of a reviewing them because I think the only one that comes to my mind is like father like son. That's the one that just comes to my brain immediately. But I don't always get it right. I don't always say it right. So but I always understand it when people say it. And there are a number of them that when people say it, I'm like, oh, I know that. I know that phrase, but I never use it myself. So this is my opportunity to write some down, and then go in and practice them. And so the way that I'm going to do that, I'm going to walk you through what I did with French. So I already told you that I had done a search of them before. I'm looking at, I did all of this I have a Google Doc where I do my studying and not always. So here's the thing. I have a notebook and I have a Google Doc. So depending on um, the day, my mood, whatever, I will either use my Google Doc or I will use my notebook. But I always put the date and that's about the only thing that I like. I always put the date. So let's see. I'm just fixing something here because I made it a heading and it wasn't a heading. Huh, horrible. When I wrote that Wednesday was the 9th and Monday's the 9th, that's not true. Monday wasn't even the 9th. Monday was the 2nd and Wednesday was the 4th. We're just going to fix these things while we're here. So bear with me. This is very important. Okay. So here's what I did. Because this particular blog post had the idiom, and then it had the meaning of the idiom, and then it had the literal meaning in French, and then it had an example. I mean, for me, this was exactly what I wanted because that's all the info. I find it super interesting what the literal meaning is because it's almost always hilarious. And I also appreciate having the meaning that makes sense to me in English, even if we don't have that particular idiom, we have a sentence or phrase or whatever, something so that it makes sense to me. And then the fact that they put it into a sentence so that I can use it as well. So those are the things that I copied. And then I also copied, oh, I guess I didn't. Well, I'm gonna have to go back later and copy. Because I thought I had copied the blog post where I got it from. Well, like I said, I'm gonna go back and do that because I do want to know where I got it from so that I can go back and do it again. Well, like review it. And I used some of them during the week. And as you heard me mention about Wednesday, I went back because another one came up and I don't know how. I think that they had sent a newsletter out, that same French teacher. And so it had that idiom, a new idiom that also had food in it in their newsletter. And I was like, oh my gosh, idiom week. How did they know? So I copied that one down on Wednesday. And then I did a review of the ones that I had looked at on Monday. So lots of practice that went on. And one of them I just used on my own while I was talking with a friend. Because something they said reminded me of it. And so I couldn't remember exactly what the word order of the idiom was. And so I got to go back and review it after I brought it up in that conversation. And then, so it just kind of goes to show that these things will be on your mind once you start working on them. So here's what I ended up doing as my practice. I decided that after I did my little investigation about the idioms, that I would use them all in a like story. So in this case, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I had 7. I was trying to keep it to 5, but so I had 7 idioms and I wrote about so basically I said to myself, I said, Vicky, tell me what you did over the weekend. Tell me about your weekend. And so that's what I used. So I manipulated my answers so that they fit. I mean, you could make up your answers if you wanted to, but what I was trying to do was to use real life situations, but make it work for the idioms that I'd chosen. And I think that almost all of them worked out pretty well. And then afterwards, I went to Google, what do you call it? The Google Translator. And I put in what I'd written because I was just curious if it understood me. So here's what I do. This is how I check my stuff if I'm going to use Google Translator. So I put in what I write in French. Then because I do French to English. And so I put in what I write in French and I look over the English and see if that is what I was trying to say. And then there's the 2 arrows at the top, so you can flip it. So then I flip it, because if all the English was correct, then I flip it and I see what it would have translated it as. Like, how would it have written it? And it was really interesting because it didn't use like any of the idioms that I put in. And so that made me wonder, is it because those idioms aren't common, or just because Google Translate was trying to come up with something um eh, like less colloquial? I don't know. I don't know if they just thought it wasn't natural sounding. I don't know, because it's, Google Translate, and you can't ask it, why'd you change that? Google Translate? Because then it would just translate what you wrote and it wouldn't tell you why it changed it. But I'm going to go off and do that practice. Hope that's given you some ideas for your own. And we will get back together on the flip side. And I'm also going to check and see if I had this explanation twice on here. If it was super embarrassing or just mildly embarrassing. We shall see. Oh my gosh. Okay. Be back in a bit.